Everybody listen to We're Not Wizards, because we are the best, and we're not wizards, no matter what anybody says. Goodbye.
Welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for June, because it's 6 months in and the sun is shining and the birds have gone to bed because it's a little bit late. But you know, you can't have everything. Sometimes it depends, because it depends on the company you like to keep. Sometimes you like to have people kind of around you that you know, and sometimes you like to keep maybe a little bit of mixed company. So if I'm going to be talking about mixed company, I really need to speak to somebody who's a little bit of an expert. Maybe somebody who's even made a game about the subject. Maybe somebody who's even got a games company called Mixed Company Games. That person is Elizabeth Snyder, and she's joined us today to have a chat about Mixed Company, which is currently on Kickstarter. Isn't that right, Elizabeth?
It is right. That is the truth.
It's not a lie.
It is not a lie.
It's not a lie. How you doing?
I'm all right. How are you doing?
Yeah, you know, broadband aside, we're good.
Right.
We're fine.
You know, other than technology.
It's that wonderful, but technically we're talking a couple of thousand miles away almost instantly.
Which is pretty amazing.
You can't. It is pretty amazing. That's pretty kind of cool. The reason that we have you on tonight, and the reason that we have anybody on the show, is because I am very nosy and I like to find out a lot about people. And sometimes I put a post on Facebook and I say, who'd like to come on the show and talk about the Kickstarter? And Elizabeth she stuck up both of her hands, which I don't know how you do that on Facebook, but she managed it. And so we started talking, and they're here tonight to have a chat. And so here we go. And so what we want to do is we want to find out a little bit more about your good self, about how you got involved in the hobby in the first place, how you got your ideas for Mixed Company, and anything else that we decide to discuss. We do not know what is going to happen. Let's have a conversation starter and let's see where it goes, which is, I believe, is a little bit to do with the Mixed Company game.
It fits pretty well. It's true.
There you go.
Yes.
I've done my research.
It's about being a little bit nosy, listening to what people say when you're nosy, and having little conversation starters. So that's all true.
I kind of could probably do with that. How involved are you in the kind of the hobby, this world of pressed and printed trees? I mean, how long have you been in kind of playing games and stuff like that?
Oh, I'm a giant nerd. Giant nerd. I have, in my dining room, I have 5 10-foot shelves that are all role-playing game books. So I have 50 linear feet of RPG books in my dining room. That's how you measure that in a library. And then I have an entire closet full of board games to go with that. So we've been doing it for a minute. It's been a little while. I started off in tabletop RPGs. That's where I actually started. Yeah. And then my boyfriend at the time, now husband, said, let's go play some Avalon Hill games. And so I got in the easy end. I got in the shallow end of the gaming pool with jumping right into squad leader.
That's not jumping right in. That is kind of like, give me 150 press ups and kind of then.
Here we go. Yeah. But oh my gosh, we game all the time. But that's honestly kind of how we got into the mixed company side of things too, is because there was a discussion at work about some things, and I was like, I bet I can make a game to fix this. And so,
Were you quite part of a gaming family kind of growing up then? I mean, do you remember just kind of like spending kind of days kind of playing games, or did you kind of get into it kind of like school, kind of college kind of thing?
my brother and I used to play all the time. We didn't play a lot with my parents, but I am responsible for my brother's CCG addiction. He
It could be worse. It could be PCP addiction.
It could be a lot worse. So when he was about 10, we introduced him to Magic the Gathering, and it was all over but the crying. And so
that's not a very nice thing to do.
There's it wasn't.
Terrible things you can do as an older sister, and I think introducing
somebody to Magic the Gathering is one of them. So, and he's been making up games for a long time. He does a lot of making up games.
Yeah.
And he would take our clue set and write entirely new rules for the pieces, and then we'd play, and it would be totally different than the regular box. Much more violent. But you would carry around your weapon and try and assault the other players while you were figuring out who had gotten killed. So there was a little bit of stalking on the board going into it. And then he added story cards, and it got really interesting. But so he and I, and then my fiance, boyfriend at the time, now husband, played a lot. Almost every night we'd play something while I was in high school.
I can just imagine your brother. I can just imagine your brother saying, "So that's 10 hit points of damage," and you're like, "Okay, give me your arm."
No, he's bigger than I am. He's almost a foot taller than me. So
wow.
No, he's 6'3".
Wow.
So I don't want to give him the opportunity to win there. I'm wee. I'm only 5'3.5". So he'll definitely win. But so we've both him and I. He's also into role playing games, and tabletop too. And
you got particular systems that you're fond of then? I mean, are you a D&D person? You like Vampires Masquerade? Do you like? Does it vary? Have you Shadowrun? You know,
I have done all of those things. I have many of the Ds and the Ds, and I have Orange Spines. I have fifth. I don't have fifth yet. I have 4th edition stuff. Vampire was my jams. For a long time. I got Vampire 2nd edition the week it came out. And still have it. And I have a 1st edition copy since then that I picked up at a used bookstore. But we played Vampire most of the way through college. So we played Vampire for a while, and then switched into, I did a lot of mushing. So a lot of all text-based stuff. Played on some really good Werewolf, the Apocalypse mushes. And we've played, let's see, what else have we played? Shadowrun is one of my husband's favorites. He's going to go actually play Shadowrun tomorrow night at the game store.
Oh, there you go. I was just plucking them out of thin air, so that was just a guess.
We have, oh my gosh, what else do we have? We have Firefly, the role-playing game. I have Dresden, the role-playing game. I was running a Blades in the Dark game for a little while. I've played a lot. I've played a lot of them.
Do you mix it up between GM and your own campaigns and then being a kind of like your own player?
Yes.
I mean, what do you prefer to do? Do you prefer to be kind of weaving the stories for other people, or are you quite happy just to kind of like sit back and let everything wash over you and let you get immersed in it?
I like trading off. I decided very young that I was going to live a life of rejection, and decided to be a professional writer when I was in the 2nd grade.
Wow.
Which I haven't done. I've written some novels and I've written a lot of short stories, but So I like the GMing, but I also do like playing, and so I like the fact that we trade off a lot in my group. So yeah, I'm much more narrative. My husband gets really frustrated with me because I forget to spend my experience points all the time, and so I'm much more of the ROLE player than the ROLL player. So I tend to lean towards the not class and level based games, but the more open-ended sandbox style systems. If I'm going to run
it. Are you kind of more happy just to let the story kind of go then, and then you have to get reminded about the stats that you're kind of fighting?
Yes, yeah. And then it'll be like, we're getting ready to roll, and I'll start pulling out my dice, and everybody's like, why do you have half as many dice as everybody else? And I was like, oh, yeah, I haven't spent experience points for 9 months. So, yeah, I'm much more into the story side and the character development and the world building.
What about the board games? I mean, RPGs seem to be one of these things that seem to be continually growing. There's more and more players. Is that because of ease of entry? Is that because I can take a room full of people and just say, right, who do you want to be? Roll some dice and away you kind of go, and you don't have to spend kind of poring over like a rule book?
I don't know, man. It takes us like 3 months to make a character in my house. And I'm not kidding. Not kidding at all. So I think it's a combination. I think some people do really enjoy both, and that's great. And most of my friends do both. But I can say that some of my friends really lean more one way than the other. I have some friends that will play board games if that is what is presented to them as the option to participate in. But they would much, much rather do RPG. And then I have other friends who are like, I mean, we can sit around a table with a pencil, but can we not have something that we see? Like they like the interaction of having the board game. They like the interaction of, and honestly, in a lot of those cases, they like the wrap up, right? Like a board game, you play, you win or you lose or you don't, and you're done. And then an RPG, it can stretch for years. And I've played in games that lasted 10, 12 years before. Wow. So, I think that that's another piece of it. And I think that the interaction is different. The social interaction is different in a lot of board games versus card games. In a lot of board games, it's you and your friend sitting there doing the thing. And again, and once we get into the subgenres of the board game session, I have some friends who really only want to play co-op. They don't like competitive stuff. They only want to play social games, co-op games. They're not interested in playing against each other because they feel like they want the team sportness of it. Most of us are pretty indoorsy. We don't do a lot of outside. I'm in Oklahoma. It gets pretty warm here most of the year, so we're very fond of our air conditioning. It's already been over 90 a few times this year, so Fahrenheit. Yeah.
I don't remember. We don't know those numbers here.
Right. It doesn't happen very often.
I know speaking to my friends in kind of like California and Utah and telling them that, like, we're getting up to like 56 degrees 56 degrees Fahrenheit, and saying, it's so hot, I can't stand it. And they're saying, look, it's 62 here and I'm thinking about putting on a sweater. What are you talking about?
Well, it's all relative.
What you kind of talking about?
It's all relative.
Because the way your aircon kind of kicks in and stuff like that.
I had a friend in college who was from Sweden. Johan, he came to visit us in August. It's the hottest August of my life. Literally, it's the hottest August on record that I've been alive. It was 114 degrees outside Fahrenheit. And he had messaged me. We'd been talking online, and I was like, are you sure you want to come in August? Are you sure you want to wait till the end of September? Maybe October, when you won't melt? And he's like, listen, Elizabeth, it gets hot here in Sweden, too. we get up to whatever he missed. It messaged me. He sent me some, I don't even
Yeah.
remember what it was in centigrade, and I converted it, and I was like, that's 83 degrees. Like, I mean, I appreciate in the heat of the summer it gets to 83 degrees.
Yeah.
83 is
yeah.
not the same as 114, man. Like,
No,
it's
no.
a whole other level of warm.
It's a new kind of planet.
Oh,
It's a
yeah.
new kind of planet. Do you think with role playing? Do you think with role playing games there has to be like a certain level of trust because people
Mhm.
aren't just sitting there and playing as a person? They're usually putting on some kind of character, and whether that be a subtle kind of character interaction, you get people, that completely kind of ham it up and completely go for it, and that means you have to be comfortable within the kind of group. Whereas a board game, you can maintain your own identity and just play the game regardless. The board game represents who you are.
Yeah.
When if you're role playing, it's you that's representing the character. So you can be playing kind of Istanbul, or you can be playing you can be playing Stone Age, you could be playing Dinosaur Island, but I'm not playing as a caveman, I'm not playing as a geneticist, I'm not playing as a spice trader at the time. I'm still just me, I'm just kind of moving the pieces.
Right.
Whereas if it was an RPG, there's a potential I'd be trying to put on the kind of the accent or giving myself a bit of a backstory and stuff.
Well, not only that, I think that's a really good observation, because I think the other thing is in a tabletop game, you generally, mine's a little different, but generally reveal a lot less about yourself than you do in a role-playing game.
Yes.
When you're playing a character, there's always you in the middle of it. And you can be something completely different. You can be a stabby rogue. You can be a vampire. You can be a, Russian dynasty werewolf. You can be all these kinds of different things, but there's still a part of you that's in that character, and people tend to take things that happen in role-playing games way more personally than they take tabletop games. Not universally, but generally speaking, I think that's really true. And I think you're right. I think that's another piece of, if I've had a really long week and I've used all my words, I'm going to be much more inclined to want to do 5 tribes than I am to want to do Shadowrun. Like, it's gonna be way more my speed to just chill out, have a coffee, hang out with my board with people, or Zombicide. We Zombicide a lot, so being able to just get it all out. Now, we do have some D&D games that we've played where it's essentially a board game where you keep the same character throughout, and there's not as much characterization in there, and that can kind of be in the middle, I think, but yeah, no, I think that's a really good observation about some of the differences between. I think sometimes people prefer board games because they don't want to do that digging that you're doing when you're doing a role-playing game.
I think there's also control over the theme as well. I mean, in a board game, I know what I'm doing, I know what it's going to be. There's not really going to be any horrific surprises,
right,
kind of cropping up. You know, in a role-playing game, it depends. Depending on do I know the DM? Do I know them well enough? Is it somebody I've only known for a couple of weeks? Is it somebody that I've known a couple of years? Could they be bringing stuff in that I'm kind of like, I don't like this. This is boring. This is dull. This is exciting. This is scary. This is uncomfortable with me, kind of thing as well. So I think you've got, the board game. You're kind of like, if I don't want to play, I can go in and say, I'm not into post-apocalyptic dystopia. I don't want to play Wasteland Express Delivery Service. I'm not going to go in there and be kind of surprised by anything. Whereas I guess in a role-playing game, there's a potential for somebody to put something else into the game. You're like, okay, I wanted to go down this route with my game. Kind of, thank you.
Right.
Thank you very
exactly.
much.
And, that wasn't what I expected from a Friday afternoon.
Yeah. I know, but on the other side of it, you can get levels of excitement that you potentially might not get in a board game as well.
Yeah.
You might come away going, that was amazing, that was fantastic, this all clicked into place. What you did there was so kind of funny and good fun. I remember one of the sessions, which is we were playing 5th edition, and I went into a room and I was a orc, and I went into a room and there was an owlbear there. And I said, I am going to roll for animal husbandry. And I rolled like a 19. and so the owl bear became my pet.
Yeah.
So I spent the rest of the dungeon going around with this owl bear behind me, just like, yeah, it was my control. I just went and we just decimated the rest of the place. It was absolutely fantastic and kind of wonderful.
Well, and that's if you look at Dragonlance, the Dragonlance novels, the first set were written based on game sessions. That's how Boo comes about as a character. The person who's playing Raceland just crit successed on an enchantment roll. And now all of a sudden there's this character that's this gnome that's following them around and is part of this game and changes the entire dynamic of that character moving forward because it's a different relationship gets added in there, and it's totally a different thing. So
with the kind of the knowledge that you had with the experience that you had, you mentioned kind of mixed company kind of came about because of a work kind of thing.
Yes.
So have you been the type of person that kind of walks into the office and subtly leaves character sheets around people's desks in the hope that they'll go, oh, what's this? And you can say, well, it's a character sheet if you come along on Friday. Are you kind of like...
No, not generally. But I work with a bunch of software engineers.
All right, well.
So, really what ended up happening is we have really interesting conversations. I work for a very small software development firm, and I'm a software analyst by day. And we have really interesting conversations at work because since it's a small company, people will walk into my office and sit down and go, so gun control. And like, seriously, and we'll just be like, okay, let's do that. So we have these really just in-depth conversations at my office when we feel like it. And we were having a conversation and something came up, and I was thinking to myself, well, you're coming from a different background of experience than a lot of other people in the community, and that may be why you don't necessarily understand the frame of reference that they're making their decisions from in this particular instance. And I said, so what do your African American friends think about that? And he said, well, I don't have any African American friends right now. And I said, okay, well, what do your Hispanic friends think about that? I don't have any Hispanic people that I talk to. And so I think I've arrived at the reason that you don't know why somebody would have a different opinion than you on this particular topic. And he said, well, but here's the problem. I can't walk up to somebody and say, will you be my black friend? Because that's not gonna go well. And I said, well, it's good that you've sussed that out early. Because you're right. I agree. That's not gonna end the way that you want it to. It's not gonna get you the result that you're looking for. And what came out of that conversation was, especially for introverted people, which software engineers in many cases are, not always. I've had some people get really frustrated with me because like, I'm not introverted and I'm a software engineer. Good, bully for you. But I think that's true in a lot of gaming environments too. I think one of the reasons that we have so many people in gaming that are introverted goes back to exactly what you were saying a second ago of it gives you a structural way to engage with people in a safe box, in a safe space that you know what's going on. You know what the rules are. I can pick up this game and I can walk up to somebody I don't know, but I understand what that interaction is going to be like because I have this.
Yeah, framework. It's no secret that people that have slight levels of autism that you would say are on the spectrum cope very, very well in a board game or an RPG kind of environment because there's not necessarily the surprise elements for them because they've got the rule book. And even in an RPG situation, if a warg or whatever is charging at you, you're in control of that situation because you are only granted kind of like 4 or 5 actions.
Right.
The DM isn't all of a sudden gonna put you in a situation where you don't have the skills to deal with that situation because you at the beginning you're rolling your character to deal with that. So I can understand the attraction, and I know people at the board game club that I go to who they say, I've got social interaction issues. I'm aware I'm, somewhere a little bit on the Asperger's or autism spectrum. But if if you're playing a board game with them, you wouldn't know that unless it was brought up in conversation.
Right.
Really.
Exactly.
Because they're,
And so that's where it came from is I was like, okay, so how can I make a game about cutting through small talk, essentially? Because that's one of the other things they were saying they were really frustrated by when we got into this larger conversation is they're like, I want to know these things. Like they genuinely wanted to get other people's perspectives and input and feedback, but they didn't have a way to do that. They don't want to spend 5 weeks or a year or 2 years getting to know somebody before they can ask them these questions that are, kind of driving their curiosity at that point. So, or impacting their decision making, right? I mean, we're getting ready to come into a pretty big election year. There's going to be some significant things that are going on, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of what we're seeing politically happening in this area right now is people don't necessarily really understand the perspective of different people as well as we'd like to think we do. And so having an avenue to do that again is in a box, it's safe, it's structured. So when I've been designing the game, that was really kind of one of the cornerstones that I kept in mind. A lot of people will come from, I'm in a couple of board game designer groups, and they'll come from different angles. They'll be like, I have this mechanic, I want to do a game that's that's a take that, or I want to do a game that uses really cool dice, or I want to do, like, they're coming from a mechanics perspective. And for me, I mean, that really was the mechanics perspective that I was coming from, was I wanted to make the game a space where there was structure around the conversation. So everybody coming into the space knew that's what was going to go on. That's what you were going to be doing. So it's, so this weekend I was at a convention running lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of sessions of my game. And in my booth, I had a table. And one of the things we do is we lure small children in with candy. And so I have a bowl of candy on the table in the middle of my booth, right? And
can't say that, Elizabeth.
Their parents are there. Their parents are right there.
Child catcher.
So,
children, get off my candy. Children, look. You've got a cage. Have you got like a gypsy wagon kind of thing?
No, I've got a folding
thing.
table.
The sides fall off.
No, it's perfectly safe. Just a lot of sugar. So then there's that argument. But so the children would come up and they'd see the bowl of candy, and they would say, can I have a piece of candy? And I would say, I don't know, will you play my game with me first? And they would look at me for a second like, it's a trick. I know it's a trick.
See, it moves very quickly from being bribery into blackmail.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
Yes. Or a capitalist exchange. I'm trading my piece of candy for 5 minutes of your time, right? So,
well, they better get used to working like this in this environment.
Especially if you're going to be here. So
especially if you're going to be in software engineering.
Right.
You 20-hour shift and you get 2 bits of candy. That just sounds like a dream for some organizations out there.
So the parents will come up and they'll be like, okay, they don't talk with people much. I was like, that's okay. We'll just see what happens. So I would stack the deck and I would pull out questions that were age appropriate for the little kids, because technically my game's 10 and up. Mostly because I want them to be able to read the cards. But these were littler kids than that most of the time. But if you read them the cards, they can really have a good time. So I would read them 3 questions. I said, okay, we're going to pick. Do you want to talk about, if you were bitten today, would you rather be a vampire or a werewolf? Do you want to talk about, should pineapple be allowed to be served on pizza? Which is an incredibly explosive topic, by the way. Or do you want to talk about, if you found a briefcase and it had lots and lots of money in it and you had to hide for 24 hours where no one could find you, where would you hide? What sounds fun? And they would point at a card and repeat it back to me. Pizza. Let's talk about the pizza. And they would say, I like pineapple on my pizza. And I would say, okay, tell me about why you like pineapple on your pizza. And they would, go into the description. And we'd talk for just a couple minutes. And I would say, okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And then I'd reach over to the little trophy cards and I'd pull out a trophy card. I'd say, I want to give you the best supporting points. because you made the best argument about why you like the pizza. And they would get all excited, and I'd say, okay, now you get to pick your candy. You did your half, I'll do my half. Here's the candy. And the parents are standing there watching this whole interaction. And then the parents are like, well, how does that game work? Exactly. Because this is a child that they've already told me is not going to talk to me, and is not going to want to play a word game, and is not going to want to play a talking game. And so far, I've had 2 that didn't play out of a year of conventions. I've had 2. And they were literally one of them was about to melt down. Like she was done for the day, and her mom was like, stick the candy in her mouth. Like she just needs a minute. And then the other one was really nonverbal. But the sister came up behind the brother, and she wanted to play. And so we had a couple of families this weekend, because now that it's live on Kickstarter, I could say you can literally go on Kickstarter right now, put your money on the barrelhead, and get in there. And they were really surprised. And it's been fun to watch when we play longer games, the parents sitting down with their kids, and the dad will answer one of the questions, and he'll say, well, there's a question that's if you had to choose between living in perfect health until the age of 50, or you would live until the age of 100, but you would never see the sun after your 18th birthday, which one did you pick? And it was a family. There were 2 like older teenage girls. One of them was about 19. The other one was probably 17. And then a mom and a dad. And they sat down to play. And it gets to the dad, and he says, well, I would have to pick the 100 because I want to see my grandkids. And his daughters turned and looked at him, and they're like, Dad, I never knew you even thought about that. And he goes, I think about it all the time. I want to see what your kids are like. I want to meet your kids. When you're old enough to have kids and you've found a person you want to have kids with, I want to meet your kids. And if I picked 50, then I'd have like 3 years before I'd be gone, and I'd never get to meet your kids.
Yeah.
And so it was a really neat conversation, because then the daughters are like, I never realized you thought about that kind of stuff. I never realized you wanted those things. And the dad starts talking about how he would live underground in tunnels, and and so it's because it's how you avoid the sun, right? So, but it gets really fun. And it's still within the framework of the game, because we have a consensus building piece at the beginning where, just like I asked the kid, which one of these 3 things do you want to talk about? Everybody puts out questions and they get voted on. So everybody feels like they had a part of making the decision about what the topic is going to be. So there's an opportunity for objection. There's an opportunity to pass on something. There's the chance to choose as a group what the topics are going to be. And so sometimes groups will go more casual, and sometimes groups will go more serious, and sometimes they'll pick a casual topic that goes more serious. And it's really been fun to watch.
I'm currently wondering if you are a pineapple on pizza person. That's driving me up the wall.
Love pineapple on my pizza. My husband believes it is a travesty. So it means I get way more pizza leftovers than he does.
I believe that it depends on the quality of the ham.
That's fair.
That is going on a pizza at the same time. Because if it is that processed ham, which looks like it's just made out of pencil eraser rubbings glued together and then painted pink. You know the stuff I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It's like you chew into the pizza and you're going, this isn't the dough, and it's like, no, I'm chewing on the ham. But if you get some really nice gourmet kind of thicker ham, almost like gammon, on that pizza with a little bit of pineapple, I will eat that all day. If it's the cheap processed, the type of ham that you would see in a supermarket, and it's the one that's in the shape of a bear's face.
Right, that's not what we want. I'm talking about.
It's not, ham isn't that colour.
Has a little bit of jelly.
You don't get that kind of, that doesn't get, just round the edges. That's not going to, so there. Werewolf and vampire, that's obvious. Werewolf.
Oh, see? I'm going to go vampire.
See, I have to go werewolf. Because then, because why not? Because everybody would go vampire.
Well, what flavor werewolf are you going to go, though? There's lots of flavors of werewolf.
Just a really big one.
Okay.
a stupid one.
A stupid
Like a big,
one.
I'd turn into a big, stupid kind of Labrador werewolf that doesn't have sharp teeth, but kind of kills people with this 3-foot long, stupid drool-covered tongue and just whips them kind of out the way. And then, and I get invited into people's houses and I would sit in front of the fire and then wait until they went to bed and then I'd eat them. Because after all, I'm still a werewolf.
I'm still a werewolf.
I've still got, still got to kill.
See, I'm still going back to the whole I'm indoorsy thing. So the son and I are not friends. And so the less time I have to be outside, the better. And I always think of werewolves as pretty outdoorsy.
But I wouldn't mind that. See, the issue with vampires is that, you can ask everybody. I mean, you can go into a kindergarten class nowadays and say, children, and these are kids who they're just barely out of diapers. Half of them can't walk. Most of them can't speak. And you could say to them, could you give me 3 methods for getting rid of vampires? And I guarantee within 15 seconds, they would have given you the stake, the sunlight, the crossing water kind of thing. You go in there and you ask them about werewolves. You got, people say silver, but, really? And you know how difficult it is to get hold of silver nowadays. I mean, it's not that difficult to make a cross,
That's true. That's true.
It's not that difficult at all. So, werewolves, for that reason, and it's surprising. Vampires, you're all kind of moody and going up to people and they go, oh, you're a vampire, it's so obvious. Werewolves, well, vampires are like, they don't get sudden attacks of vampires. Not really.
Not generally, no.
Even from dusk till dawn, there's like a general surprise. Werewolves, I mean, any werewolf film is kind of like snatched in the dark and then ripped to shreds, So that's I've thought about this.
We have too. No, we have regular discussions about it. We also have discussions about if a portal opens up in front of us and it doesn't look like it's a dystopian nightmare on the other side, we're supposed to grab each other and jump through. My husband and I, we already have a deal. You don't have to ask. You just do it. Just go. Just jump. As long as you can grab the other person and you can go, you just do it.
Okay, and if you jumped into a portal and it wasn't a dystopian nightmare future, but it was run by either cats or dogs,
I would fare much better in a world that was run by cats because cats like me. I don't have a problem with dogs. Dogs like me okay, but I am a cat person, so.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I'd have to go dogs.
Which makes sense from your werewolf answer.
I've always got this great fear. I always think about these things that people say to me, well, I like cats. I do like cats. Cats are cute and they have their place. But my mother has cats and I always worry about cats and the simple fact of this. If you died during the night, the dog would sit at the end of the bed and they would mourn you until help arrived and you were found, yeah? A cat wouldn't wait until your corpse was cold before it'd be on your face, eaten away. I'm just telling you.
No, you're not wrong.
They'd be straight on you.
Yeah.
I have to ask the question based on kind of your experience and based on, how much you've been involved in the hobby and stuff like that. Why was your first game fairly non-thematic?
I think it was
because after there's no vampires in here, and I'm not seeing any.
And there's not a lot of cyberware in my game.
No.
As a rule, I mean there could be questions that come up that we add in there, but I think it was because it was a timely thing. Like my husband and I have worked on, we could create a role-playing game world. We could create a universe. So back in the olden times when 3.5 was coming out, many, many moons ago, there was a call for submissions for world building because they were going to have worlds that they were going to put out. And my husband and I each submitted 2 or 3 different submissions for world building. And we would always kick around, well, we could take those and we could, do open gaming license and we could do that. But there was never really enough pressure to do it, I think. And for this one,
Right.
it was kind of a timely thing. It was kind of, okay, we need something to fill this gap. There's not a game that does this. So whenever I'm going out to different places and people walk up to the table the first day, like, oh, is this like Cards Against Humanity? And one of the ladies that comes and runs the table with me immediately is like, no, no. She gets really upset. She's like, this game is nice. People are nice to each other. And I'm like, I mean, most of the time they're nice to each other. But in terms of the social games out there, most of them are more oriented towards I mean, and I love me a good game of Cards Against Humanity, don't get me wrong, but it's not going to help you see somebody else's perspective. It's not going to help you understand somebody else better in a way that makes you feel safe and healthy about the world. And so, and there are times when I find out things about people that I'm like, oh, you just shared that in public at a gaming convention where people could hear you. And sometimes it's really touching, and sometimes it's like, I don't know if I would have told that to a stranger, but sure. But at the same time, it's really like the more I've played, the more it's brought home to me that people really don't feel like anybody's listening to them, like to them personally, about what they have going on in their experience.
Yeah. I think that what I've seen from and believe me, I get emailed, I would say on an average of once every 2 to 3 months is somebody that's bringing up the next kind of edgy card game.
Right.
Where you have to kind of say something kind of as kind of edgy and insulting as possible. And I guess one of the things I'm aware of at the moment is there's not an awful lot of talking to. I've said this recently on another podcast, there's an awful lot of polarization going on.
Right.
Whereas you're on one side of the land or you're on the other side of the land. And, it's even been shown across kind of political voting things, the way that people are voting for and against kind of motions and things like that, that it's very, very kind of divided. And so what's intriguing to me about your game is kind of bringing people to talk over a topic and if it goes funny, it's brilliant, but it's all about getting people to talk.
Right.
Which is kind of like really, really, is really, really important. More now than kind of ever, I guess. And I think, which is kind of interesting.
Exactly. And I think that's why it actually happened, why I actually did it, and why I didn't just sit around and say, well, I can work on that on the weekends when I have time and it'll be fine. And, because, I've got notebooks of story ideas for novels, and I've got notebooks of character ideas for games, and the Blades in the Dark game I was talking about, I've run a few sessions and we don't play for 6 months, and I'm like, hey, do you want to get together and play again? And we get together and play, and it's very lackadaisical, and we play when we want to play. But for this one, it felt like, if this is the time when this needs to be available to people. And it's about families being able to connect and have a real conversation with each other. Because parents don't know how to talk to their kids don't know how to talk to their parents, teenagers don't know how to communicate with each other. The people who are trying to express themselves don't have a venue to do that. And people, like, just more and more polling and data is showing how isolated people are feeling, even when they're in the midst of a lot of people. And so it just felt like, okay, we need to do something with this. Like, we need to get out there and do it. And so, so that's why. Now, getting into this has meant that my husband is now trying to think about games he wants to design. And we've talked about a couple of other things that would be different. Mixed company, we've decided I have a business partner that is my partner, Steve, for this project. And he and I have decided that mixed company is always going to be mixed company. Like, we have tons of different expansions and rule sets and ideas for ways to take the same concept and go in a different direction with it, or add in different types of cards, or add in different types of
Mhm.
conversation topics. And we have a blog where we have contributors who come in and write an article on a topic that they're engaged in, and we add a set of questions that you can use to play with afterwards, and things like that. And so this has plenty of replayability and expansion potential all on its own. And so I think that's going to work really well, and it's on a standalone, but we'll probably have some other stuff that comes out that's more gamey. Now, but I think one of the things that people don't notice until they actually get to play is it is a social game, and it is kind of a party game, though you can only play with up to 6 people, because after 6 people, it splits into multiple conversations, and it's not really one game anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I've watched it. I've done different play tests where I had 7 people, or I had 8 people, or I had one where we played with 15 people, and it splits, and the groups always end up being under 6 or less. So it's just naturally, as people, that's how we communicate. We can communicate in a group of 6, but if you get past that, somebody's not talking, or it splits into multiple conversations. So, but there is a lot of game to it. There's a good amount of, like, there's a really casual rule set where it's just literally talk about the pizza. But then there's a more strategic rule set where you play challenges on each other that make you take different perspectives or different argumentation styles. And then there's actions that you play on each other to try and engage each other in different ways. And you can use a lot of different strategies to do that within the game. Mm-hmm. And some people are really good at that part, and some people are not. And I think it's been funny to watch, because we'll be playing and I'll be like, well, you could use an action card for that. Like, I see in your hand. And they're like, I just want to talk about this. And they started off with, like, well, tell me the rules. How do I win? What are the victory conditions? Like, how do I win the conversation? And so they'll start off there, and then when we get into the topics, they're like, wait, I'm not worried about that. I just want to know what the answer is to my question. And so that's kind of fun to watch too. But there are ways in which it's still really gamey. It's just not there's no figures, there's no board. It's a pretty small card set, really, by comparison. So yeah.
Is this not with a viewpoint then that it's going to be, I guess, more attractive to the retail market as well in terms of distribution?
I hope so.
Because I know one of my friends, Emma, she has the game Quirk, mm-hmm. which is basically it's hand collection, basically, but in mm-hmm. order to steal cards from other people, you've got to basically either do a voice or do an action of the card that you want. So if you're playing the Halloween edition, if you're wanting to get, the Dracula or the werewolf, if you think somebody else has got a Dracula card, then you got to pretend, you got to pretend, do an action of what a vampire would do, yeah. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're the werewolf, you might be saying, do the sound of the werewolf makes, kind of thing. And if they've got that card, they give you that kind of card. But they've made huge inroads into distribution and retail. They're in kind of several retail stores now.
Yeah.
And from what I can see from Mixed Company, it strikes me as a game in a similar kind of vein that I can imagine somebody kind of picking up, at the local store.
Right. Or like that's really our objective, is to get it out there. Originally, we were going to be an event-based company. We first got started because I'm working with programmers again. We were going to have this quiz. You took this long survey, you filled out all this stuff, and we were going to force diversity into these conversations with table planning and seating charts. And I realized really fast I didn't want to be an event planner. I was like, that's a lot of... And the other thing that was funny is we were demoing the game and playing it at different events to try and get people interested in coming to my proto events. And they're like, but I want to buy it. And I'm like, you can't buy it. You have to come to my party. I'm like, but I want to take it home and play it with my Nana. They're like, no, you have to bring your Nana to my party. Like I'm arguing with them. And then they're like, will you not just take my money for your game? And I was finally like, oh my God, okay, fine, I'll take your money. So, which I'm much more comfortable with, actually, trying to organize and run events. So that worked out well for me. But yeah, exactly. And that's really, I mean, that's the hope, right? Is that we'll get like a Target or a CVS or a big chemist or pharmacy or box store to pick it up and have it available. And it'll be sitting up there next to Cards Against Humanity and Bears versus Babies and, all the other ones. But here's what's been really interesting to me that I didn't expect, honestly. Because our main box set initially that's on the Kickstarter right now comes with the all ages questions that we've nailed down over the course of playing. Because we were playing with about 150 questions. We've trimmed it down to the ones that people actually vote for and pick all the time. And we keep getting people wanting us to do a Not Safe for Work edition. And we were planning on doing Not Safe for Work booster packs. But apparently from a distribution market perspective, the feedback we keep getting from people in the industry is you need a Not Safe for Work edition to get on the shelf. And I mean, I can do that. I'm fine with that. It's fun. I've had some fun Not Safe for Work questions. Like, what would you do if your kids found a video of you in a porno? But it surprised me that that's the market, that's what people perceive as the market for these games. And I don't think they're wrong. I mean, from a buyer's perspective, that's the question we get all the time. But then we also get the question of, can I play this with my kids? Can I play this at my house? Can I play this with my family? And there seems to have been this weird divide in the gaming industry of games that are one side or the other and don't transition. And I'm like, well, why can't I be both? Why can't I? Which we've designed this to be able to do. But so we have a lot of teachers who want to use it in the classroom, and they're a little trepidatious at first because they're like, well, can I just take this and put it in my classroom? I'm like, yes, this edition has no questions that are going to be objectionable to your principal. You're not going to get a reasonable adult human being coming in and saying, why are you exposing a 12-year-old to this? Like, these are all concepts that are going to be safe for that. And we've designed the game so that when we add those Not Safe for Work questions, then they'll be super easy to just pull right out, and you'll be able to identify them really quickly and just snatch them out of the game so that they're not in there when your cousin comes over or whatever.
So what's the price of entry then? If
15.
we've listened and we said, well, I want to get involved in this mixed company.
It's $15 US. Yeah. That's it. $15 US. And then in the States, we have international levels for backers and US levels for backers. So in the States, we're going to do shipping through a pledge manager.
Okay.
But we've added in what we anticipate the shipping cost is going to be on the front end for the international pledges.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. And if people have listened along tonight and they want to keep an eye on what you guys are up to, where do you exist on the internet webs?
On the interwebs? So we have a website that is www.mixed.company, mixed.company. You spell the whole word out. And that's the main website. And if you want to go to the Kickstarter, it's mixed.company/KS. That'll take you right into the Kickstarter. And we have a lot of activity in our Facebook group. We have a Facebook page and a Facebook group, and we do polls. And one of the things right now, if you get involved in the Kickstarter, that we're doing that's a little bit different is there's a set of questions that are going to be Kickstarter exclusive questions that are being written by the backers and voted on by the backers as the campaign goes. So the earlier you get in, even if you just get in, we also have a print and play level. We have a $2 level where you can get the print and play, and we'll email you the PDFs out with no shipping because it's through electrons, which is magical. So as soon as the campaign ends and we finish finalizing the format for the cards, then you could have the print and play right away. And we've had a lot of people just want to get the print and play because the print and play came out. I mean, I'm a little biased, obviously, but the print and play came out really nicely because it's a very aesthetically clean game. There's the graphics are really simple, and so we've done a light print edition so that you can print it on a home printer. And not kill your ink cartridges and also not have your cards curl. So you can, especially if you're international and that's where you're more comfortable, it's a really valid option and good choice. But then that gets you in on the voting. That'll get you in on voting for the questions, submitting questions, and getting in on the action right away.
And can we find you on Twitter as well?
We do have a Twitter channel. I'm gonna be honest with you. The Twitter is mostly gonna repost my Facebook posts.
Okay.
It is on Twitter. We are on Twitter, and we have a few other people that interact with us on Twitter. That my partner manages the Twitter, so I haven't seen it as much as he does. But those are the two social media platforms: is Facebook and Twitter. I do more of the Facebook stuff. He does more of the Twitter stuff.
Cool.
And we would love to have everybody come and join us and hang out and ask questions and see what people think.
Awesome. What we'll do is we will put all of those links in the show notes so that we've got notes to show. Thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah.
It's been fun. If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, you can go to the internet webs, and we're on all types of places, worn out places. You can find us on Twitter, which is We're Not Wizards, Instagram, We're Not Wizards, Facebook. Guess what? We're Not Wizards. You can find us on our website, which is we'renotwizards.com. If you want to read some words, go to we'renotwizards.blogspot.com. If you want to see photographs, Instagram, we're on there. If you want to subscribe to the show, you can go to places that have cast in the name or pod in the name, and you'll find us. You can also go to Spotify, which has neither in the name, and you'll find us there too. If you like what you've listened to tonight, there's two things you can do. Tell someone else, even if you don't like them, and you want to inflict a Scottish person on them for however long, do that. Or the other thing you can do is you can go to Apple Podcasts for as long as it lasts, because apparently there's going to be a new app, so there you go. And you can give us a subscription, or you can leave us a rating, or you can give us a review. If you are going to be giving us a rating or a review, don't give us 10 stars, because it makes us big-headed. But don't give us 1 star, because it makes us cry, and I am an ugly crier. Give us something in the middle, because it's 5, because it's in the middle and it's average, and we're just a little bit average. But the person who's not been average tonight is rather wonderful, rather fantastic. I give you. She's not been mixed company; she's been good company. It's Elizabeth Snyder. Again, thank you very, very much for coming on. There's only 2 more things to do. The first thing is to remember that we are many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Elizabeth?
I mean, sometimes I pretend like I'm a wizard. I understand that you do not pretend that you're a wizard.
No.
I from time to time do pretend that I'm a wizard.
Right, okay.
I'm just being honest. I want to be truthful.
There's always one.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah. But I will make sure to let everyone else know that you, sir, are not a wizard.
That's acceptable. I will, I'll hold you to that.
Yes.
And the second thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from Elizabeth. Say goodbye, Elizabeth.
Goodbye. Thank you for having me.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll 6s, make something awful. And if you fancy a little bit of conversation, a little bit of a conversation starter, something that gets you thinking, something that gets you blathering, something that gets you discussing, then check out Mixed Company. It's on its way to funding, it's doing well. Check it out, and it's something different. just like me. But until the next time, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.